Welcome to the ETF.com video series. My name is Dave Nottig, Managing Director at ETF.com. I'm here at Inside ETFs with Fiona Bassett, Managing Director of DWS. Thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
So Fiona, you guys were early in a lot of spaces, early in China, early in currency hedging, and now you've got a whole suite of ESG products that you just launched. Tell us a little bit about what's going on there.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this. We've been very focused, really since we started, about identifying areas where we felt there was a real structural demand for solutions in the marketplace. And ESG is an interesting area because as a European firm, it's something that's been deep DNA and heritage for us going back over 20 years. So one of the few areas where the Europeans have perhaps led the Americans. And now what we see really across every client spectrum is a huge demand for ESG solutions. Last year, we actually launched the very first ESG liquidity fund to the US marketplace and followed that up with 3 MSCI ESG leaders, ETFs covering ACWI US, EFA and emerging markets. And what we see is really that ESG will become core to people's portfolios, and therefore there's going to be a demand and appetite for ESG policy benchmarks, and we're very focused at ensuring that we are delivering to that demand across equity and across fixed income, and doing that in a cost-effective manner because we believe you shouldn't have to pay more for ESG.
So most people think about ESG and they think equities, they think corporate governance issues, they think fossil fuels or tobacco, but you're launching a liquidity product, right, the short end of fixed income. How does ESG play in that space?
Actually in the same way as equities, because you can screen issuers in exactly the same way that you screen stocks. So we have a proprietary ESG engine that actually we use for the ESG liquidity fund that allows us to screen the front end of the curve and to ensure that we're actually delivering a product that's focused on providing a best-in-class solution to clients.
So when you define ESG, it's always a bit of a definitional issue, and you're looking at that MSCI ESG leaders indexes that you're basing this on. Is that removing bad stocks? Is it leaning heavily into good stocks? What about the methodology makes it unique?
Yeah, so actually it's a combination of both, and I think it's interesting because the ESG conversation has really moved on from what was a negative exclusionary conversation into a kind of much more impact orientated. And so the methodology essentially screens out, has some negative exclusionary criteria, but also focuses on a best in class, taking the top 50%, and then ensuring that we have a very, very low tracking error to the benchmark. And what's really interesting about it is actually that you see a pickup in performance and a reduction in volatility through ESG, which is very evident actually if you take a look at EMSG. So I think it's very exciting for investors because now you have a range of solutions that you can invest in that allow you to allocate capital in line with your value and not sacrifice performance in the process.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big criticisms about ESG in a packaged product like this, as opposed to picking stocks, is that you're going to take this huge tracking error. You're not going to come anywhere near ACWI because you're kicking out huge swaths of the marketplace. So it sounds like what you're focused on is really letting people have their cake and eat it too?
Yeah, and I think, there's been a huge amount of development in the amount of data that's been available for ESG, and I think that has actually generally improved ESG products through time, or let's say ESG methodologies. And what's interesting is we did a study actually with the University of Hamburg, and it was a meta study that looked at all of the studies that have been done on ESG to really try to answer this question of can you do good and can you do well? And the conclusion of that study is yes, it's possible to do it, but it's also true that it's nuanced. So you see the impact, if you like, of ESG screening criteria can be different in different markets. And I think we have an obligation as a provider to provide education generally in this space. I mean, actually, what we would really love to do is see a set of minimum ESG criteria, if you like, that was industry-wide, but that is probably one for a few years down the road.
I mean, I think anytime we have something that's fairly new and novel for folks, whether it's smart beta, currency hedging, ESG, it's hard to get everybody to agree on what we even are talking about. So it's great to see you partnering with somebody like MSCI and really going straight to the core of it. So Fiona, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us here at Inside ETFs. Stay tuned for more.